All right, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. It's a bit unusual to be having our assembly on a Wednesday afternoon, but we're coming together today to observe an important holiday. In past years, our returning students might remember that we will typically have a big all-school assembly with the lower school, middle school, and upper school coming together to recognize Veterans Day. And due to COVID, we're not able to bring the whole school together this year, but we are thankful that we've got this opportunity to bring our middle school community together and just to pause for a few moments for some reflection and to show our respect and appreciation for those who have served our country. I've talked a lot this year to you guys about the importance that we feel in the middle school about putting others before ourselves, about some of the relatively small things that we can do on a daily basis for others, about thinking about the greater community first and putting ourselves second. And that's the foundation of a strong community. It's one of the things that we recognize often with our Heart of the Bulldog Awards, that idea of sacrificing something so others can have a better experience. And that idea of putting others before ourselves, that act of sacrifice and showing our appreciation for those who've served is definitely at the heart of Veterans Day. So today we're recognizing people who have sacrificed their time, people who have made the choice to leave their homes in some cases, to leave their loved ones, to put themselves at risk in service to all of us. And that demands our respect and our appreciation. So I'm going to ask all of you to listen actively and respectfully during this afternoon's assembly. We do have a faculty speaker. I'm really thankful that he is able to join us and share a few remarks about Veterans Day. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Beelan.
All right. Good afternoon. I am humbled to be speaking in front of you all today. Veterans Day 2020, a day which is about honoring and paying respect to our military service veterans and active duty service members for their sacrifices and service to this country. Every spring for the past 5 years, I've had the pleasure of teaming up with close to 40 different veterans and active service members, all while connecting them with my 8th grade students as part of an immersive learning unit. It is through this ongoing work that I hope to play a small role in lessening the military and civilian divide, all while inspiring the rising generations to better understand the multifaceted nature of what military service is. And over the next several minutes, I can only hope that this sentiment will be authentically conveyed to each of you. If you are at all familiar with the Serenity Prayer, you may recall the part that says, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Many of the principles found in military service, like discipline, honor, teamwork, leadership, as well as a sense of duty and service to others, have always been core values of mine too. Yet when it came to making my college choice back in 2003, I made the regretful decision to turn down an offer to enroll in a military college, and later on never pursued reserve officer training programs. This is something that I've come to accept, and while I may never have served in the military or have an exhaustive family history of military service, I have found that my chosen line of work as an educator has allowed me to embolden students to better understand the many faces of military service, from the voices of veterans and service members themselves. On September 11, 2001, this country's trajectory, and arguably the world's, would be forever changed. The events on this day served as a harsh reminder that our country was still fragile, as well as a call to service in action for many Americans. For some Americans, like Sergeant Chris Kelbaugh, this meant an immediate enlistment in the military at the age of 18. Chris would go on to deploy twice with his Marine unit into active combat zones, surviving an unimaginable event, as he calls it, and receive a Purple Heart. Upon hearing Chris's story, one of my former students asked him, "Knowing what you know now and surviving what you did, were you ever afraid of going to war in the first place?" Chris took a moment and then responded, "In the military, you are taught the phrase, you prepare for war, pray for peace. And I would do it all over again if I had to. Service is doing something all over again, even if it is the definition of adversity and hardship. Whereas some saw 9/11 as an immediate call to service, there are others too who saw their callings a few years after the fact. This too is service. Take, for instance, the story of my close friend, retired Captain David Donahue. At the age of 23, Dave was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps and assigned to lead his first platoon, which consisted of 50 Marines assigned directly underneath him. A few months later, in 2010, Dave would go on to deploy to Afghanistan as an infantry officer and a platoon commander in support of Operation Enduring Freedom in the South Helmand province in Afghanistan. He remained there for 7 months. On paper, one might think that deploying to an active combat zone conflict area was service in and of itself. However, Dave's service went beyond this physical deployment to Afghanistan. Prior to his platoon's departure, Dave took the time to handwrite a letter to all the parents of his Marines, promising them the following. Although their entire deployment would include moments of placing their child in harm's way, he would do whatever he could within his power to bring them home safely. Dave did that. Dave's small but powerful gesture also helps us to better understand that having to respect, humility, and grace when delivering a potentially sobering message also constitutes service. When Dave returned home from his first deployment, I assumed that he didn't want to recount his deployment, so I never asked. Although Dave and I have been friends since we were 14 years old, I felt a need to shield him from having to recount any quote-unquote war stories that may not be so positive. This perspective was ultimately shifted because my students were able to ask him questions that had never previously crossed my mind. What did you miss? How was the food? Do you still keep in touch with your Marines? Would you do it all over again if you had to? How do you feel when somebody says thank you for your service? To the credit of my students, every single one of these questions have always been led with a genuine curiosity about what service means to veterans like Dave. And I know that he would want you to walk away with a sense of empowerment on how to go beyond just saying thank you for your service. As Dave recently reminded me in a call leading up to the speech, I just want people to remember that there are sacrifices behind a statement like that, and that you understand that when you are thanking me or any other veteran for their service, it shouldn't stop there. Don't be afraid to ask questions and engage with us. Just be genuine and lead with curiosity. If we are truly hoping to lessen the military and civilian divide, we must also recalibrate our minds to not always think that military service equals combat. In fact, according to the Veterans Coming Home organization, just 1 in 10 or 10% of all actively deployed military personnel are ever actually in a situation in a combat zone with the likelihood of engaging the enemy. So why are numbers like this so important for us to understand? Oftentimes, this misconception about military service can work to marginalize and diminish the equally as important roles and occupations that one could play while serving in our military. For example, upon graduating from medical school in 2004, Dr. David Rich, father of Noah and your classmate Emma, and husband to Mrs. Rich, received orders from the Department of the Navy that he was to serve as a lieutenant in his first year of residency at Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth in Virginia. From 2005 to 2006, the Navy assigned him as a general medical officer aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt in the Persian Gulf in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. During this time, Dr. Rich's service took him away from his family during the holiday season, as well as for the birth of their first child, Noah. Missing out on pivotal, once-in-a-lifetime events with loved ones is also one of the many faces of military service, as is being a military spouse on base while your loved one is deployed. Through conversations with veterans and service members, students have also learned that service may include humanitarian missions to provide local citizens with basic medical care and health checks in different parts of the world, or even building a school in a remote village in Afghanistan from the ground up, literally. Likewise, even when one's official military services come to a close, some veterans continue to find a calling to start nonprofit organizations which serve to act as informative platforms as well as safe spaces for veterans across the globe to gather in fellowship with one another. And as we prepare to sit down with many of our loved ones for this upcoming Thanksgiving holiday in 2 weeks, there is no doubt that things will look and feel quite differently than in years past. As we acknowledge the loved ones who are unable to join us as they normally would this year, I do encourage each each of us to also be thinking about the less than 1% of our active service members and their families who are also unable to be together for the holidays. This too is service. In closing, I want to leave you with these thoughts. Some of you might eventually pursue careers in the military, and others will not. For me, my role as an educator has allowed me to play a small role in serving those who have served through an immersive real-world curriculum which seeks to lessen the military and civilian divide. Regardless of the ways we choose to do it, I challenge all of us to seek opportunities to connect with and support our veterans and service members, because this too is service. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Beelan. As we were planning for today and knowing that Mr. Beelan was going to share some important and powerful words, we were hoping to have some music, and I was really grateful that Ms. O'Brien and our 7th and 8th grade strings ensemble was able to perform again. We had a great performance from them last Friday, and it's great to see you guys here again. And they are going to perform a piece that's appropriate for Veterans Day. This is called Honor and Glory. Thank you to the 7th and 8th grade strings ensemble and Ms. O'Brien. That was terrific. Before we wrap up, I want to just say that I appreciate everyone's attention as an audience this afternoon at this assembly. I also would ask that we give one more show of appreciation to Mr. Beelan for his words this afternoon. Thank you again, Mr. Beelan. And a huge thank you also to our strings ensemble. Thank you, guys. It was great.